Okay, so I just wanted to show a little bit about how to approach or start this project on what we call screen scraping, or pulling pieces from the web to create an automatic task for you. This is the website that I had provided for you in the description, and if you look at it, it doesn't look much like a web page. In fact, it's the data behind a web page, and this data will change, of course, every time you refresh or rerun this page. So what I want to be able to do is pull out some information, let's say like temperature, for example. And I want to see if, number one, I can use some tools inside Small Basic that will let me use an online resource like this over the network and be able to find text inside it, for example, like the 36.3. Temperature in degrees Fahrenheit. So I'm going to grab this URL, copy that, and then I'm going to come over to Small Basic, and thinking about it, and maybe I'm not even sure I'm using this right, but I'm going to use the network object, and it has the possibility of downloading a file or getting web page contents. And if I select get web page contents, over here in the red, it says what URL you're going to use. So I'm going to put in parentheses and quotes the URL that I want to use. Now, what do I do with that? Well, this is going to go out and fetch the information, but I need to store it somewhere and be able to save that. So I'm going to say create a variable like weather page and set it equal to that fetch. And so when I go out and get this web page, it'll save all that text from this file in here into a single variable string called weather page. All right. So now I have a bunch of text. I want to be able to see if I can find or search through that text. And I have an object called text. And if I look at it, it has, for example, things like get index of. Well, we know index is like a number. So, for example, in arrays, we talked about the index of each of the elements. So what that means is the number of position of something. Okay, so let's say I say something like text dot get index of, and I'm just going to kind of scroll through and get this. And it says what text and what text are you looking for? Well, the text I'm going to use is the weather page variable. And what text am I looking for? I'm going to look for, in this case, temp_f. Now, I want to know this kind of the starting position of this, so I can start here with the quotes, but in fact, the quotes might kind of treat this a little bit tricky. So I'm going to use in quotes the specific text I want, and I'll start with temp_f. Just making sure that I know where this is going to start. So this is actually going to look at this position and find the numeric position of this first letter. The reason I use all of temp_f is that a T by itself could be any T throughout the document. Alrighty, so that's going to get me a number. Well, I need to save that. So let's go back here, and I'm going to say that starting number is equal to that position there. Okay, so I've got this number here. Now if I was to able to, let's say for example, print the text there, what if I was able to find temp_f as a variable from within that? Well, text is my tool, and maybe I'm going to say get subtext. That means a smaller piece of this, get subtext, okay. And what text am I talking about? Well, I'm still talking about the whole weather page because I want to get some other stuff in there. And get subtext has 3 arguments. The first one is the text. Where do I start and how long do I go? And this one's going to be the tricky part, but we'll figure this out. So what is my starting position? Well, I use start as a variable, but that's the starting position of this point here. In fact, what I want to do is add some numbers so I start at this position. So if this is the first position, then maybe I'm going to add 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So why don't I do start plus 8, and then the last argument of subtext is how long do you want to go. Well, for now, let's just do 4 long. And let's see if I can make this work where I should get 36.3, or roughly there. So I'm going to do text window dot right line. And I just want to show something like the temp is colon space concatenate temp f. Alright. If I run this program, then I should expect to see something in the command line about 36.3. And 36.5, because that's changed if I refresh this page. I see that 36.5 is actually the current temperature. So it's changing kind of on the fly. Alright, well that's working. The last step I want to do is be able to save this to a file. And how do I do file again? Let's see, file dot, I can do append contents or write contents. And I'm just going to use write contents because I want to replace anything that's in there. File path, I'll probably go C colon backslash CS1 backslash weather today dot txt parentheses, and what are we writing? Let's just say right now I'm going to put temp F, but I could build or concatenate a whole bunch of things in there. So this should create a file, weathertoday.txt. Let's make sure it's not there yet. So I'm going to go to C, CS1. I have weather app, but I don't have weather text. It's from an earlier test. So let's see if I write it. It runs it. It should also write the file. There we go. There's weather today. And there's that 36.5. So I could add more to the contents of this file just by changing what's here in the second argument. The last step is, how do I get this file to show on my computer? Well, if you recall, we wanted a scheduled task, so I'm going to hit the Windows button and type schedule, and there's what's called a task scheduler. And it's going to create a little structure here, so I can say, basically, I'm going to go up here to the top corner, create task, and what kind of task? I'll say weather info, and run when logged in, etc. What's the trigger? Click OK. What's the action? Well, I'm going to create a new action. What do I want to run? Well, I could just have it open weather today. So that's the action from the action tab in here. There is a tutorial you can kind of run through this if you need to, but the question will be, when does this run? And I can time that if need be. Conditions, and it'll allow me when to run it, etc. inside here. So you can play with this a little bit. It's a little bit of discovery. And so basically, if you notice that I've got some other things running, a trigger is basically, when do you want this to run? And so I can modify that, go in, double click, look at triggers, add a new trigger, and say, when do I run it? I want to run it daily, every day, I don't know, at 9:26, or maybe you can set it to 10:30 in the middle of class or something like that, and start on the current day, turn it on, etc., and then see if you can get it to build. Now, once you've got that piece, you've got essentially all the foundational pieces of this kind of larger automated task. You're just going to essentially tweak it a little bit and add to it. All right, we'll see you in class.